Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to our weekly investor forum. We'll be jumping right into the company profile before we formally introduce our guest for this evening, Mr. Raul Glynn, Managing Director of Carreras Limited. Also, today's Q&A segment, we will feature yet another special guest from Carreras, Mr. Rahulio Paredes, the Finance Manager of Carreras. We encourage our viewers to post their questions on social media and to remember to tag us with the hashtag #MILInvestorForum. If you enjoy this program, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll also be featuring a segment on foreign exchange, so be sure to stick around until near to the end of the program. Registered in 1962, Carreras Limited is a leading marketer and distributor of cigarettes and tobacco-related products in Jamaica. Since then, it has operated as a tobacco and cigarette merchant and importer, dealing in tobacco, cigars, and cigarettes. Carreras also deals in articles that are required by or useful to smokers. In January 2021, Carreras Limited advised of its intention to expand its product line, specifically exploring the possibility of selling cigarette lighters, rolling paper, shavers, and razors. Carreras is a publicly traded company with approximately 50% of the company being owned by Jamaican shareholders. I'll take this moment to remind you that if you're seeking to expand your investment portfolio or embark on your first investment journey, Mayberry Investments can guide you in achieving your financial goals. Follow us on social media and visit our website at www.mayberryinv.com to learn more. Now let's introduce our guest for this evening. Raul is Managing Director of Carreras Limited with over 18 years of experience with the British American Tobacco Group. This marks his second appointment at Carreras, having served as a trade and marketing and distribution manager from 2009 to 2012. Prior to this appointment, Raul held the position of country manager at Charisma Marketing Services. There, he was responsible for the general management of 21 markets of the English, French, and Dutch-speaking Caribbean, the largest volume base in the region. Raul has been a member of the board of directors of the Demar Tobacco Company since February 2017. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of West Indies on the St. Augustine campus. Today, he'll be giving us an investor update on Carreras Limited. Welcome, Raul, to the program.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Also, I'd like to welcome online our chairman, Mr. Christopher Berry, and Rogelio. Hi, Chairman. Hi, Rogelio. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Dan.
Great. Raul, I gather you have a presentation you'd like to make to us.
Yes, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity, Dan and Chris, for allowing Carreras. So quickly, let's jump into it. Carreras, as you know, leading tobacco marketer, distributor in the market. It's a pretty large market, 480 million sticks, high NTO pool, 10.5 billion Jamaican dollars. And Carreras enjoys a high share of market, 78% share of market. The biggest, other than us, is illicit trade, which is a key factor that I'm sure we're going to be discussing during the course of the session this evening. Our share price, pretty stable, heading in the right direction, about 8.98 on average, but we think it's severely undervalued in terms of where it should be.
I agree.
And in terms of our stock unit, in terms of dividends, about 21 is the last amount displayed. And in our dividend policy, our payment policy is 100% of dividend. Really strong performance. I think one of the key messages that a lot of people don't realize is that we do have a very large local shareholding. So we are intrinsically a Jamaican company and one of the 10 best performing on the JSE for the longest time. And of course, our main purpose is increasing shareholder value. If you go to the next slide, we take a little bit about what we've been doing in the last couple of years as lead to this point, which is all about transformation of our portfolio. Becoming now growing the top line is one of our key elements that we continue to focus on, and we have been delivering on that. And now is this new era of going beyond tobacco. And we'll talk about some of our partnerships with Procter & Gamble and so many of the other players who are coming to us because of the strength of our distribution model. Our route to market is bar none in terms of Jamaica, in terms of all the areas that we can reach significantly in a quick way, in a meaningful way, really forming business partnerships. But again, illicit trade continues to be our biggest competitor in the market. We have been having inroads The authorities have been working hard, and we have been seeing the benefits of that. In the next slide, you'll see some of the other areas we're looking at. And we see ourselves mainly as a revenue collector for the government. And it has been really strong performance. Ever since the excise increase of 2017, we've seen ourselves clawing back year on year and fulfilling that role of collecting that revenue for the government. So when you see as a whole, when you consider this SCT, CAF, corporation withholding tax, it is phenomenal in terms of what we mean to the national GDP. But one of the things that we have to continue to focus on is that growth year on year, and that's what we hope to promise, and that's our ambition going forward. If you go to the next slide, talk about our renewed focus, which is a little bit different from the tobacco-only solely approach that we had. In terms of meeting societal needs, because our stakeholders, our consumers, our customers is asking us for safer products. And through science, we're trying to make sure we bring that into the fore, and that Carreras becomes known more and more for that. So we're adding new categories, leveraging on the strength of the research being done across the group, and ensuring that we have a sustainable delivery in everything that we do. Because shareholders, consumers, customers, employees, society as a whole is key, and we have to fulfill that mandate we have with them. Next slide, just a couple more we have it just in terms of how we've been doing that currently in Jamaica. With COVID, all of us have had to step up, and it was critical for us to play our part in doing for the most vulnerable in the market. Community developing is one of the key things, and our scholarship program, which you're going to see in the next slide, is one of the things that we're extremely proud of. It's just about 104 employees that we have within the company. But if you see on a social scholarship program, in the next slide, it's something that we feel very proud of, that we've been able to deliver and contribute over 250 million in scholarships over the last 11 years. And it's one of those fantastic things when you sit on those panels and you see the great need that is in Jamaica. Young adults who just have so much potential, and all they need is the right funding in order for them to be able to fulfill their true potential. And we're very proud that we're able to contribute towards that. And this is something that we hope to continue to do year on year. Next slide, you see us looking at some of the outlook that we have, the positives and the negatives. We always will have that. I think volume growth is one of the key things that we continue to be able to deliver year on year, and we've seen the success of it, clawing back from illicit trade. Our portfolio is now much more robust, much more in tune with what the consumer needs, and our route to market, as I mentioned, is one of our key strengths. Increasing shareholder value is critical, and it's going to be one of the key things we focus on, and ensure that we have robust CSR initiatives that really fulfill our need, that mandate that we have with the society as a whole. Negatives exist as well, so we have to be open with that. We do have, COVID continues to be with us. I think it's going to continue to be with us for a little bit more. But we have been resilient throughout. We have one particular bill that's before Parliament as well, driven by the Minister of Health. And again, we're open to regulation because we also have quite a bit of self-regulation ourselves. But there are key elements of it that I think is going to be critical for us to continue to work on. And we're grateful that the Minister of Health and the government, there is a level of engagement that is being allowed. And we hope that it will come out in terms of something that is really more balanced. The trend, as you know, I don't need to tell you, you know the trend of our share price. It continues to perform well, but we think it has so much more potential. And our dividends continue to be quarter on quarter, delivering in line with what shareholders are demanding. Because there's so many options in the market, and we want to make sure that we play that part, that they can put that focus behind us. Last slide, if you go forward, it just talks about our ambition. It's critical for us to continue to have that volume growth, and we're seeing it, and we feel confident in what we have delivered in the past and what we feel we can deliver in the future, based on the plans that we have and the strong talent that we have within the organization that will allow us to be able to deliver this and continue to add shareholder value as a whole. That's it for us for my presentation.
Thanks so much, Raul. We really do appreciate that presentation. It gives us good insight to the business, and I'm sure we're going to dig a little bit deeper as we ask some questions and answers to do a little bit. All right, from my perspective, I also like to give our investor perspective of Carreras, and I can't help but agree with a lot of what you said. So here's a look at how the stock has traded in the last year. It's unbelievable to me that this stock traded as low as $6, because even at roughly $9, it still only reflects a PE ratio of 11.6 times. In a main market where the average market, Harmeen average is 17.4 times. I mean, honestly speaking, guys, there's no reason why Carreras should be trading at less than 14 times. And at 14 times, we're talking about a $10 20 stock price. So I think this stock is easily 30% undervalued. And let me tell you why I like Coors when you look on the next slide. It's definitely one of the blue chips, a must-have in any big portfolio. And when you look at the top 10 or top 20 shareholders of Coors, you will see that it's held by all of the big players, including the National Insurance Fund. It's a company that makes $3.5 billion profit in their sleep. And while some people have complained that it's been a little bit flat for the last 3 years, how many companies do you know make $3.5 billion per year in their sleep and then dividend it all out?
Yeah.
And so when you look at the stock price today, that dividend yields about 9%. If you bought this stock at $6.50, you'd be sitting on a 10, 11% dividend yield. That's absolutely unheard of. And so we here at Mayberry also love Coors because it's a strong, solid company. It's proven itself to be COVID resistant. The profits are pretty strong. And now you're telling us you're looking to grow that into 2022. And I know one of your biggest challenges are the illicit trade. And it's just really impressive what you guys have done so far.
Yes.
And I have no doubt that you're going to continue to grow from strength to strength. And this stock will clip $10.22 in the next 12 months, in my view. I personally, my average cost of holding Coors is $10.40. And I'm not complaining because it's still a great dividend yielding stock that has to be in a good portfolio. It's hard not to have Coors in your top 10. And then on the last slide, what I want to point out is how well they've done in the last 3 quarters. And you guys, you know, I tend to focus on, is the company growing? How well are they doing? How did they do through COVID? So again, we saw them take a dip in the first quarter, because of COVID, and how they're bouncing back really strong. But on a 12-month trailing basis, the EPS is still solid at around 73 cents. It's still consistent with how they've averaged over the last 3 years. So they took a knock in a quarter, they've bounced back strong, and it's just growing from strength to strength. Chairman Berry, do you have any general comments you'd like to make in terms of my analysis on Coors? Any general comments at this stage before we jump into the Q&A? Chairman Berry?
Yes, Dan.
Yes.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear.
Yeah, so my only comment is in 35 years at Mayberry, we've never had a client who regretted buying Carrera's stock.
Okay, I agree with that. I appreciate that. Good deal. So we want to jump into the Q&A, and my first question is going to be a little off base, Raul. I don't know if it's for you or for Rahilo. You mentioned $8 billion of taxes as being what you contributed in the last year.
Yes.
Is that the special consumption tax only, or does that include the corporate taxes as well?
It includes all.
It includes everything.
Yes.
So again, you know, guys, how many companies do you know out there that can say they contributed $8 billion to the national coffers? I mean, other than Coors and the other one I love, Supreme Ventures, I think it's hard to find any. Okay, so jumping into our first question, guys. In your opinion, what more could be done to limit the illegal trade of cigarettes? That's the first question I'm seeing. Okay.
Illicit trade is a scourge that, and doesn't just affect cigarettes, it affects so many other categories in the market. We have to say that, you know, the government, the customs agencies, CET, etc., they have been doing their role, which is trying to make sure the borders are less porous, etc., and etc. But the key thing that I think is needed is teeth, meaning that the legislation must ensure that the penalty for dealing in illicit products really matches what it does, because illicit products robs the national coffers, as you mentioned, from much needed revenue. And also today, there's so many spillover things that come from that trade in terms of all the things related to some of these societal ills that's taking place with violence, etc., etc. And illegal cigarettes just seems to fund that. One of the key things that we've been getting from the CET members that we've been talking to is that you have so many players who are moving from quote-unquote hard drugs, transportation and trade, to cigarettes, illicit trade, because the penalties are so less. So the value of it is equivalent, but the penalty is so less. So it's really important that we have those penalties really matching the scourge that is illicit trade in the market.
That's a good point. And very important, again, when you consider the contribution that comes from a legal business paying over taxes and special consumption taxes. And second, slightly off-base question, Raul, is, I mean, this is a significant amount of your total revenues. Roughly speaking, these taxes account for what percentage of your total cost of a cigarette that you're selling?
Oh, it's heavy.
It's substantial,
heavy.
30, 40%.
Exactly,
huh?
exactly. It's almost 60%.
60%.
And that's why it's really difficult for us to compete with the illicit ones, because the illicit ones, they avoid that entire tax net.
They're not paying any taxes.
Exactly.
So when you guys are out there buying illicit cigarettes, not only are you robbing the government, but you're buying a product that you don't know what the quality is.
Absolutely.
I hate to say Chinese, but again, you're buying something that is really inferior.
Absolutely.
Second question from us is, once approved, the passing of the newly traded tobacco bill will ban all forms of tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. In what ways will this affect the tobacco industry and Carreras specifically?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Dan. And this is before the Joint Select Committee currently, and there's a level of engagement. One of the key things that people don't fail to realize that we already have regulation in place, and it's been quite effective thus far. And on top of that, Carreras has its own self-regulation that sometimes even goes further than what is available in the national level. One of the key things that we're seeing with it in terms of the current regulation as it stands out now is the unconstitutionality of certain elements of it and what it creates in terms of an uneven playing field. So you have certain elements of it that will ban in terms of the sale of products in rum bars. In Jamaica, they have over 10,000 rum bars. How are you going to tell those persons? And about 29% of the revenue that those rum bars make come from legal cigarettes. If you tell them they can't sell cigarettes anymore, how are they going to make up that revenue? But again, I'm really grateful for the Minister of Health and the JSC that they're allowing engagement. So I think we can have a meaningful dialogue. They can see where our views are, where their views are, and maybe come to something that is much more balanced and enforceable in the market. So I feel very confident, and we've been having good engagement.
Excellent. Over to you, Chairman. Do you have any questions for Raul?
Yes, so back in the day, long time ago, one of the things that used to happen with the cigarette company is that the whole tax revenue was managed in such a way that it wasn't always an increasing percentage of the sale price of the actual item. Have you been able to make any headway on that? Because I noticed for maybe the last 15 years or so, the government has been moving back to a model of increasing the rate of tax when there's other ways of making more tax revenue for them without increasing the rate of percentage of the sale item being taxed. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting view. And one of the key things that affects us as well, Chris, is that in Jamaica, almost 85% of the consumption of cigarettes is in stick. And with the coinage, it moves by 5. So the excise increases that you speak of, those percentages increase, it has a spillover effect because it makes every move by a $5 because of how the coinage is. It has a greater impact on the consumer and as a result, it has a big reduction in the volume, the legal volume, which is quickly made up by the illicit volume. So it's a key thing that we've been working on. I must say, Dr. Clark and the team at the Ministry of Finance are open and understanding in terms of the situation that's taking place. And they have been working on ways in terms of how we can and how the government can gain more, but without putting additional pressure on the consumer. Because that's the key thing. The consumer is king, but the consumer is stretched. And I think it's critical for us to they recognize that, and they're trying to find ways of how to do it without having the legal market be severely affected, and we can contribute more and more revenue each and every time.
Yes, and I would...
Dan, a follow-up question
sure,
here. So
of course, Chairman, of course.
78% market share that you're talking about, is that a percentage of the legal market or of the total market?
That's the total market, Chris, because if you go to the legal market only, it's about 98%. So a lot of the growth in our growth plans really comes from the illicit market in terms of what we can claw back as we get more and more consumers. Because the consumers are there. It's just they are smoking now. 20% of them are smoking brands that don't pay their requisite taxes.
Right.
And what's the value of that, roughly?
In terms of government revenue, we estimate about $2.1 billion.
Oh, so that's a big chunk of change right there.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure Dr. Clark and the team can do with that. And we'll gladly be able to help them towards achieving that if we can.
And there's no doubt that the consumer base is price sensitive. So
yes.
if they can buy an illegal cigarette for 40% cheaper just because of the tax benefit, let alone not to mention that they don't have any quality checks
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and the type of distribution channel that you have, then people will be tempted by
Yes.
the illicit cigarettes, and the government will lose tax dollars. So in a sense, it really suits them to reduce the quantum of the SCT tax, which is what Chris is alluding to, and they would probably collect more revenues
Yes,
in,
as the
in absolute
volume.
terms
That's
as the legal volumes increase. So
that's spot on. That's spot on.
Makes great sense. Great question, Chairman. Next question from us is, how does CURS plan on expanding its distribution footprint? Are there any plans for regional expansion or partnerships in the near future?
Yeah, partnership is a big part of our plan currently and is already working. As I said, Procter & Gamble is come to us, and we're managing certain elements of their portfolio. And many other suppliers in the market is really coming and asking us to piggyback on that strong distribution footprint that we have. But there are so many opportunities in Jamaica currently, and we're fulfilling that. We're expanding in the east, we're expanding in certain areas, and we're building closer partnership with some of the big wholesalers and rebates. Papine Wholesale, Mandeville Liquor, those are partnerships that we found, and they're working in terms of expanding their distribution into areas that we may not be able to go to, but they can go to with a range of products that allow us. So right now, the focus is Jamaica, and because I think the opportunity is there, and let's maximize that before we look at anything else. That's the general thinking as we stand.
Great, that makes sense. Next question is for Rogelio online. It says, how has the disruption in the global supply chain impacted raw material availability, and were you forced to adjust prices?
Right, thank you for the question, Dan. Yeah, so I'm going to answer in two parts, no, which is the way the question was posed. So first supply chain, and then commenting on price adjustments. Speaking of supply chain, there was no disruption experienced, because of COVID on our supply chain. So both on the primary supply chain standpoint, so from our production, our raw materials were secured, and there was no disruption in our factory because of COVID, right? So that's for the primary supply chain. And then on the secondary supply chain, so the distribution island-wide, on the same token, it was unaffected, and we had very robust plans and contingencies in place to prevent any disruption from happening on both our production and our distribution supply chain. So that's to answer the first part of the question. No disruption experienced so far, and we have the plans to keep it that way. And then in terms of price adjustments, the answer is we haven't adjusted prices, right? So we recognize the difficulty that our consumers are facing, just as all of us are in the midst of COVID. So we are very aware and very mindful of that and of that situation that our consumers are undergoing. And it's also very important to remember that in 2017 we had an important excise increase. The SCT had a significant increase, which had a stretch in our consumers' pocket, right? So we are very mindful and very aware of that as well. So Carreras has a preference to focus on efficiencies and how to drive unnecessary cost out of the business than increasing prices. So we are mindful of the situation that our consumers are undergoing, and we have not adjusted prices since 2017, and this is our preferred course of action to protect our volume base and to take care of our consumers' pockets.
Well, great. Thanks for that, Raul. I do have one more question for you as well, too, is would Carreras enter the marijuana dispensary market in Jamaica? This is a question a lot of people want to know.
Yeah, maybe I can help Rogelio on that.
Okay, sure.
Because and Marcus Steele, who was the former MD, he got that question a lot as well. Because we're in Jamaica, in the land that's globally known for marijuana. One of the key things behind it, though, is that it has to be science-based. So there's a lot of research taking place by the parent, by BAT, across the group on it, because that's one of those things that you don't want to make a mistake with, because it's an unknown territory. So we prefer to have as much science and focus behind it. But when the time comes, believe me, we are going to be there, because Jamaica is very difficult for us to have that product that is Jamaica as a whole and not maximize on it. But it's one of those things I always remember my mom says, measure twice and cut once.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that we have it right. We have the right product. There's a lot of elements of it with PRRP, which is potential reduced risk product, which is the vaping products, etc. That is fantastic in terms of how it works together with the product, but let the research take place and we'll see what takes place.
I like that approach. I like that approach. Chairman, any questions from you?
No more right now.
Okay, not a problem. Next one from me. For the 9 months ended December 2020, Carrera's operational expenses fell by 20%, which is in line with your previous announced plans to cut costs. What were these strategies and how have you improved efficiencies, Raul?
You're missing
I
it.
can probably take on that one.
Rogelio. This one's for Rogelio. They mixed me up. Rogelio.
The hours.
Yeah, both ours. Yeah, so I can take on that question. Yeah, so when on the onset of the pandemic, we knew that we had to be prudent just as everyone else, trying to understand how our company was going to be affected. And yes, we predicted and we knew that we were going to cut costs. But I think it's also very important to to take this question to answer this question in terms of investment, right? So we have to acknowledge the fact that 2019 was a year of investment for Carreras, and we knew that our consumer was demanding innovation in our product, and that's why we launched an aggressive strategy innovation-wise behind Matterhorn. And this strategy is showing a positive return on investment, right? So that's why, we have to answer the question, we have to take into consideration the fact that 2019 was a year of investment. Now in 2020, it was more a year to increase our focus on efficiency, and no one-off investments were incurred in 2019. So we were focusing on cost reduction, and a lot of a significant proportion of this 20% reduction that the question alluded was coming precisely from the fact that 2019 had a reduced level of investment, right? And I also want to say that Carrera's approach toward investment is always to assess and recognize opportunities for investment. So whenever we hear our consumers asking for innovation, for portfolio improvement, so we listen to them, and if we recognize a potential for positive return on investment, we action, just as we did with Matterhorn in 2019, and we will continue to do so. So that's my answer.
Thanks, Rogelio. I appreciate that. That's a comprehensive response. I'm going to have a follow-up question on one of your responses earlier, but I do want to remind you guys out there in social media that if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in. Back to you, Rogelio. I think you mentioned an increase in the SCT rate in 2017. Could you say what percentage increase that was? And did you guys feel like it affected your sales in any way? Did you have to make a price adjustment, or did you absorb it in some way, shape, or form?
Right. Yes. So it was the increase was roughly in the order of the 20%. Wow. So our prices had to be adjusted accordingly, because otherwise, we would just be driven out of business. And driven by this significant SCT increase, our volume base was also contracted, right? So, and this is, the discussion that you guys were having earlier with Raul. The consequence of that was a significant fall down in the revenue for the government, right? So, yes, this is why we are taking care and we are focusing on protecting our volume base by keeping our prices constant. And in doing so, we have seen since 2017, sustained increase in our sales volume, consequently a sustained increase in our revenues, and the revenues for the government as well. And ultimately, this is favoring the consumer, favoring our shareholders, and this is pretty much like the equation that we're trying to follow in our business.
Excellent. Thanks, Rogelio. And we do have a few questions coming in now from social media. The first one is as follows. I noticed that Carreras did a rebranding at the beginning of the year. Was this not a risky move, especially coming out of 2020? What does this rebranding entail exactly?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the risky move, I'm trying to figure out, maybe because of the COVID, etc., the pandemic. But I think it was part of the plan. So it's always part of our plan, as I said, because our stakeholders are saying they want a transformation from us as an industry. And they're looking at safer products. And I think that's, if you look at our new tagline, Carrera's The Better Tomorrow, is linked towards that significantly. While FMC, cigarettes, continue to be a core part of our business, we want to make sure we bring new elements into it, fulfilling that need of consumers for different types of smoking elements, but also safer products. And that's one thing that we have with the PRRP, which is the potentially reduced risk product, mainly the vaping product, is significantly safer than cigarettes. And that's already fulfilling that need of that consumer to still partake in that ritual, but with a safer offer. And we also, similarly, we have it to tackle grabber, because grabber is a big part of the Jamaican environment as well in terms of consumption. So we have loose tobacco also coming in, et cetera, et cetera. But then you have the overlay of that, of a strong distribution footprint. How can I put in elements that drives costs actually down, because I'm bringing razors, I'm bringing different elements onto it, and really allowing me to have a strong distribution footprint, but also opens doors with other categories for the entire portfolio that we have. So it's all part of that rebranding. And it's been working really well. I think people understand it and respect it, and they're looking forward to the journey just as we are.
Excellent, excellent. And I certainly think you have a amazing distribution channel. So I can imagine as you push more products, new products through it, it's going to flow right through to the bottom line, naturally.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I'm really impressed by is the sales force. Our sales force is top-notch in terms of understanding that role they play, in terms of being driving the engine of the growth that we have. And they've been able to absorb these new elements and continue to focus on what needs to be focused on and delivering handsomely.
Excellent. And I also personally think that vaping is sort of a big trending thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And will create the avenue for you guys to grow the business quite a bit as well, too.
Absolutely.
So long and short is I think the prospects for Carrera's looks pretty strong. And I think the government has a vested interest to not overtax the thing, because I think you can demonstrate that's...
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Excellent. Well, appreciate that. Folks, we're going to move on throughout the segment now. Next, we would like to go to our top stocks. Great deal. And so other than Carrera's, which I obviously love, I have another top stock pick for this week. It's not new. I just want to reiterate, it's Lumber Depot. Again, Lumber Depot, they had their IPO a little bit more than a year ago, December 2019, came out $1.20. Today it's trading at $2.40, and you might say to yourself, oh, it's grown by 100%. Does it have any more legs in it? And I'm here to say, yes, it does. So it's trading at a 20 times PE ratio in a junior market where the Harmeen mean is about 24 times. So I think this stock could go further 20% because lumber really is looking good. As we go to the next slide, you'll see that the company has grown its shareholders' equity by 34% in the last year alone. So that's pretty significant. They're up to $500 million in assets, $279 million in equity. It's a business that's clearly going to start paying dividends. They may not get to the level of Carrera's giving you a 9% dividend yield, but I still think it's going to be a great dividend yielding company. And they're managing to keep growing their revenues. And as we said before, in the construction industry in general, we've seen how resilient Jamaica has turned out to be in that space. And all of the businesses that support the construction industry, we've been seeing them showing rock solid growth throughout the pandemic period. Guys like Carb Cement, and lumber is no different. And again, you can see that very clearly on the next slide when you look at the performance in the last 3 quarters in particular. So yes, similar to Carrera's, they had a bad quarter, and since then, the last 3 quarters, they've bounced back really strong. And so this is why I personally like lumber. It's going to support the construction sector. I think they have lots of legs left in the business, and then that stock's going to grow by a further 20% in the next 12 months. That's my view on it. Chairman Berry, do you have any thoughts on it? And we have to declare that Mayberry is a large shareholder in Lumber Depot. Didn't bias my view, but I do want to declare that for our viewers out there. Chairman Berry, what are your thoughts on Lumber Depot?
Lumber Depot is good.
I like it.
Up and in the right direction.
Great, appreciate that. And I didn't even mention that, like Carrera's, so many similarities I didn't think about, debt-free, generating a lot of cash. It's just a great business. I really do like it. And I think we're going to see them grow from strength to strength. Good deal. Moving along, we'd like to talk about our decliners and gainers for this week. Starting off with Mayberry, down by 6%. I'm sure that'll correct next week. Purity, down by 6%. Paramount, down by 6%. G West, down by 3.66%. And Sagicor Select F, down by 3%. And for our gainers, we have BPOW, who happens to own a significant amount of lumber. Supreme Ventures up 8%. Cygnus up 7%. Medical Disposables up 6.89%. And Express Catering Limited up by 6%. Great. Moving on to our market segment where we like to talk about the foreign exchange. Once again, this is our 4-year graph showing the average devaluation rate being about 2.7% per annum over that 4-year period. And on the next slide, it hasn't been linear, of course. It's been sort of up and down, up and down, up and down. We saw where the dollar had reached the peak of 152, then revalued in recent weeks to as low as 145, and now we're trending back up to 152 again. And on the next slide, you can see where year to date, therefore, we've gone from that low where we started the year at 142.65 to pretty much a high year to date of 152, 6.65% devaluation year to date, which could extrapolate to 22%. Not that I'm predicting a 22% devaluation, but we definitely on the higher end of the ebb and flow that you saw on the graph just before. Chairman Berry, what are your thoughts on what's going on with the exchange rate and what can we expect going forward for the rest of the year?
Okay, so my first comment will be, there were trades as high as 150, 154 today, over 154. So that 152 you put on the graph is not actually the high. I don't think 154 is going to be the high for this year. I think we're going to go, or the low, if you want to put it that way. I think we're going to see lower lows, but we also going to see two-way movement. So, I wouldn't go chasing it here. There's rumors in the streets of all sorts of crazy prices. I mean, I wouldn't go trading rumors. There's some positives for the Forex market this year. With tourism coming back in, we're going to get more flows there. Already we're seeing remittances way up over last year, and that's being driven by some fundamental changes in the remittance market. On the negative side, however, we have higher oil prices, and some of the people in the oil market think that oil prices could go way higher. And I think the BOJ has to really watch the current account and see how that whole thing plays out. But it's still early days yet. I'm still optimistic, so I wouldn't go chasing the dollar at 55 and 56 and 57 right now. I think eventually it will pull back.
I appreciate that. And do you think it'll be significant, Chairman, the fact that the BOJ has pretty much flown the gate, so to speak, on the payment of dividends and what might happen there?
So I think that's definitely a negative factor, but also remember that was baked into the cake before. And so it's just a return to the status quo. And I'm expecting very strong revenues from tourism. It's going to be building every month through to the rest of the year. I think tourism probably is going to be stronger than what people expect. I think you're going to have a roaring 20s effect where people want to go out because they've been cooped up so long. So, it's too early to say that one factor is going to outweigh the other. I'm not so sure of that.
Great. No, I appreciate your perspective, and your insights are always very useful. I look forward to seeing how the independent central bank will operate going forward. That should be exciting. I absolutely agree with you that tourism is going to be coming back stronger than ever. As of May, I think we're going to start seeing the activity picking up, and hopefully we'll get our COVID under control. The vaccination process will be rolled out aggressively. I think the government has demonstrated their ability to vaccinate 75,000 people in 4 days. So hopefully we can get a lot more of that happening so we can actually get a large amount of the population vaccinated, especially the tourism workers, to support the tourism industry coming in. Raul, are you much of a stock man? Are there any stocks out there that you like? Any particular one that...
Can't say Carreras, right?
You can say Carreras.
Carreras and Seprod.
And Seprod.
That's really standard.
Seprod, yeah. I wonder if your pick of Seprod has anything to do with the former CEO of Carreras, Richard Pandoe, who has now moved over to Seprod. And Richard's doing a great job. We had him on the program a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate that. Well, Raul, it was great having you here today. Rogelio, it was a pleasure having you. Really appreciated you guys. Really appreciated it. To our viewers, thank you all for being a part of our weekly investor forum. I'd also like to thank our special guest, formerly Raul Glynn, for being with us, for his participation, and for Rogelio. Really appreciate it. We're certainly looking forward, folks, to having yet another insightful discussion in the upcoming week. We'll actually be featuring Jeffrey Hall, CEO of Jamaica Producers, next week. So be sure to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our live streams, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mayberry Investments Limited. Thank you all to our viewers for tuning in today. Keep safe, and remember, wise investors, slow and steady wins the race. Goodbye.